How is this cocktail that symbolizes everything that was wrong with Prohibition connected to women like these, who gained the right to vote, became liberated, took control of their bodies, and used their power to expose the hypocrisy of guys like these, which led to a new deal that finally ended this raw deal?
Find out on this upcoming episode of Happy Hour History.
In the 1920s, change was roaring ahead in America, thanks to a worldwide economic boom and rapid social evolution. Despite passing a constitutional amendment in 1919 designed to prevent Americans from ever drinking alcoholic beverages again, lots of people were in a partying mood, and for good reason. They had just survived the worldwide Spanish flu pandemic that had killed millions. So to celebrate, a new variety of cocktails was invented during Prohibition to quench their thirst. But there was one cocktail that really summed up these wacky times: the Scofflaw. It's dry vermouth, grenadine, and lemon juice, and it's delicious. We'll show you how to make it later in the show. The word Scofflaw was invented during Prohibition, and it perfectly described the mood of the people, at least those in the urban part of the country. People in droves scoffed at the new anti-drinking laws, and social drinking exploded in the big cities. Think of it as America's original counterculture revolution.
All right, man.
It was also the first time in American history that women drank together with men in the illegal speakeasies. Called flappers, these scofflaws were part of a newer generation of women who loved a good drink as much as the men. And who could blame them? But before women transformed into the freewheeling flappers of the 1920s, several key events had to happen first. In fact, at the start of Prohibition, these independent women still couldn't vote, but that was about to change, thanks to the effort of several women's organizations and something unprecedented that happened in 1913. The National American Women's Suffrage Association, originally led by Susan B. Anthony and later Carrie Chapman Catt, had worked for decades to pass women's suffrage legislation at the state and local level. Not as well known, and it should be, was the National Association of Colored Women. Its leadership included Mary Church Terrell, Ida B. Wells, and Josephine St. Pierre. Their motto was "Lifting as we climb." In addition to gaining the right to vote for all people, their social agenda focused on lifting African Americans up and out of poverty through education, job training, wage equity, and childcare. Then there was the National Women's Party, led by Alice Paul and Lucy Burns. They were from a new, younger generation of women who advocated a more aggressive approach to gaining the right to vote. So in 1913, Alice Paul did something pretty radical. She organized a Women's March on Washington, the day before the inauguration of President Woodrow Wilson. 5,000 women from around the country descended on Pennsylvania Avenue to demand the right to vote. Sadly, when it came time to march, the black women suffragettes were asked to march separately, behind the white women, so as not to offend the suffragettes from the Jim Crow South. Ida B. Wells would have none of it, and she joined her state delegation midway through the march. The march brought the voting rights issue the national attention it deserved. But it would still take several more years of unrelenting work, including previously unheard of protests in front of the White House, which led to arrests, which in turn led to the women protesters enduring forced feedings in prison. You heard that right. Finally, in 1919, they persuaded President Wilson to support their cause. In May of 1919, both the House and the Senate passed the Susan B. Anthony Amendment, and in a mere 14 months, 36 states had ratified it. On August 26, 1920, it became law. But not all American women would be able to celebrate. Because of Jim Crow laws in the South, most black women wouldn't gain the right to vote until the Voting Rights Acts of 1965, over 40 years later. This was also true for many Native, Asian, and Hispanic Americans. Women were introduced to another form of liberation in the 1920s thanks to the efforts of a nurse named Margaret Sanger. Sanger made it her cause to give women control of their own bodies by providing them with safe methods of contraception, better known as birth control. Sanger promoted the then radical idea that women should be able to determine for themselves if and when they wanted to bear children. Believe it or not, even providing information about contraceptive devices was against the law in the 1920s. Margaret Sanger was arrested in 1916 for opening her first birth control clinic. That conviction didn't even slow her down, and by the late 1920s, 30 birth control clinics were operating nationwide. Now, more women than ever had access to birth control. I'm just thankful we don't have to worry about that issue today. So most women got the vote, some got access to birth control, and many were now working in the exploding post-war consumer economy, often as skilled clerical workers, a job that had previously been reserved only for men. When all those things came together, a new generation of urban, mostly single women let down their hair and cut most of it off. They ditched the restrictive corsets and put on that crazy new French invention, lingerie. In their loose-fitting, low-cut short dresses, they danced the night away in the speakeasies and nightclubs that became centers of a countrywide pop culture scene. Women took charge of their images and started forging careers in the male-dominated world. America's sweetheart, silent film star Mary Pickford, started her own movie studio. Fellow actress and flapper cover girl Anna May Wong tried to break out of her stereotypical Asian roles by starting her own production company. Entertainer Josephine Baker became an icon of the era for both her beauty and her risque dances that challenged the morality of the time. Baker was also a pioneer in civil rights activism, often refusing to perform for segregated audiences. Josephine Baker was also a spy for the Allies during World War II. What a gal. Then there was Amelia Earhart, who became the first woman to fly solo across the US and later across the Atlantic. As we know, Prohibition wasn't all fun and games. The lucrative trade in illegal booze led to growing crime syndicates that literally made a killing as thousands of people got caught in the crossfire. In addition, thousands of people were poisoned, sickened, or made blind by the hooch that was deliberately poisoned by the US government. Wayne Wheeler and his Anti-Saloon League thought the victims got just what they deserved. Another casualty of Prohibition were constitutional rights, which were routinely violated in the name of law and order. Illegal government wiretaps and surveillance got their start back then. More on that in a future episode. Prohibition was also a job and culture killer. It totally screwed America's embryonic fine dining movement. Many restaurants, unable to make a profit without alcohol sales, were forced to close. Thousands of people in the brewing and distilling industry lost their jobs. Most of those companies never reopened, setting back the craft of American spirits for decades. The noble experiment had become a noble rot. Other countries thought we were idiots. Winston Churchill, one of our happy hour history heroes, called Prohibition an affront to the whole history of mankind. Word, Winnie. And as these things often do, the burden of Prohibition fell heavily on the middle and lower classes, as well as ethnic groups. Getting a simple beer after work was now a thing of the past. But if you had the financial means, it was really easy to get the good stuff. Now that's what I call class warfare. Well-connected rich folk began stockpiling their booze before the law took effect. During the presidential transition of 1920, Warren G. Harding snuck his booze into the White House through the back door. Although opposition to Prohibition was steadily growing throughout the decade, the political forces needed to bring about repeal just weren't there yet. The 1928 Democratic presidential candidate, Al Smith, promised repeal, but with a booming economy and the fact that he was the first Catholic to run for president, well, that guaranteed he got his ass kicked. You see, back then, there began to develop a very distinctive rural-urban divide. very much like what we experience today. The very conservative rural parts of the country were strongly in support of Prohibition. So as long as the 20s kept on roaring, most people were content to keep the pro-Prohibition Republicans in office. Then, something unexpected happened. The unregulated free market poop hit the fan. People were now desperate for a change in the country's direction. And on top of all that, along came the man in the green hat. No, he wasn't an early Dr. Seuss character. The man in the green hat was a World War I vet named George Cassaday, who liked sporting an emerald green hat. He was also the personal bootlegger for Congress, making an average of 25 deliveries a day to both the House and the Senate. Many of his clients were outspoken supporters of Prohibition. Shocking. In 1929, a sting operation run by the Vice President nabbed Cassaday. He was then sentenced to 18 months in prison. But the man in the green hat got the last word. Just before the 1930 midterm elections, Cassaday wrote a series of articles for the Washington Post stating that 80% of the nation's lawmakers were actually lawbreakers. The damn scofflaws. Consequently, the midterms of 1930 went poorly for the Prohibition-supporting Republicans, and more damage was coming their way in the form of Pauline Sabin. Pauline Sabin was one of the wealthiest, most connected women in 1920s America. She was the first woman to serve on the Republican National Committee, and a major fundraiser for the campaigns of Republican presidents Warren Harding, Calvin Coolidge, and Herbert Hoover. This prominent woman exemplified America's journey through Prohibition. Originally a strong supporter, she had become disillusioned and felt that the nation's children were growing up and becoming scofflaws. Despite all she did for the good old boys of the Republican Party, when she lobbied President Hoover to modify the Prohibition laws, she was dissed. Mrs. Sabin promptly quit the Republican Party and formed the Women's Organization for National Prohibition Reform. She was able to energize a broad spectrum of women from across the country to support repeal. In the landmark 1932 elections, women helped tip the scales of political power in favor of Franklin D. Roosevelt and the Democrats, who had promised a new deal for all Americans. That deal had thankfully included the repeal of Prohibition. Within his first 100 days in office, FDR signed the Cullen-Harrison Act, which allowed for the sale of 3.2% beer and wine. Hey, it's a start. When asked for comment, Roosevelt stated, "I think this would be a good time for a beer." The 21st Amendment, which would repeal the 18th Amendment, was soon sent to the states for ratification. Sticking an absurdist fork in the whole mess was the Mormon-dominated state of Utah, which had jockeyed for position in order to be known as the state that ended Prohibition. On December 5th, 1933, Prohibition was finally repealed and our long, dry national nightmare was over. In most civilized places, at least. Thanks to a new generation of empowered scofflaw women from the 1920s and 30s, Prohibition was history, and now we can all drink together in freedom. I'd say that's worth celebrating with Happy Hour.
I want you to have a drink now.
Hello, welcome to Happy Hour. We are at the amazing Bible Club in Portland, Oregon, and with the equally amazing Jill Cockson from Kansas City, who's going to show us how to make a scofflaw.
Scofflaw is one of my favorite cocktails to make. It is perfectly appropriate for anything pertaining to Prohibition. The story has it that it was developed at Harry's New York bar in Paris as a tribute to those across the pond who were still continuing to imbibe despite the law, so hence the name, the Scofflaw, those who scoff at the law. It's a great drink to try. If you don't think you like whiskey, I bet I can change your mind. So we're gonna start. We're using rye whiskey, Knob Creek rye today. 2 ounces of, so this drink, it does have a kick. You'd be really surprised.
And why do you say it's a good cocktail for people who don't think they like whiskeys?
I just think it really breaks down the barrier to whiskey. I think too many people have had maybe a negative experience drinking whiskey, and as a result, they're afraid of it, and this kind of brings it back into the realm of a Cosmo. I always refer to it as a whiskey pomegranate Cosmo, and that makes it a little more approachable to people, and they're willing to try that because that sounds delicious, and it is. So 2 ounces of rye whiskey. We're gonna add a dry vermouth, 1/2 ounce of dry vermouth.
So there's a lot of different vermouths out there. Why dry vermouth?
So dry and bitter components in cocktails help to balance out sweet and sour components. So you think about cooking, it's all about achieving balance. Cocktails are the same way. So dry vermouth just balances out what we're going to add next, which is a 1/2 ounce of lemon juice, fresh lemon juice. I think fresh ingredients really make the difference in cocktails, especially those classic cocktail recipes. And then lastly, we have 1/2 ounce of real grenadine. And when I say real grenadine, it's not the bright red stuff you buy in the store, but it's super easy to make at home. It's literally just equal parts pomegranate juice and sugars, and make a syrup out of that. So it's pomegranate syrup, it's not cherry. A lot of people think it's cherry, it's pomegranate. So real grenadine, 1/2 ounce of as well. And that's it. Once you have all your ingredients in your shaker, just add ice.
So traditionally, bartending is not something that women have been in the industry as much, but that's starting to change.
There have been a couple historically significant female bartenders, but in the past it just wasn't considered an appropriate career choice for women. And as a result, I believe that really helped create the existing archetype that the man is behind the bar. And now that people are shifting back to quality-driven ingredients and cocktails and product knowledge, that's gender neutral. So I think we're starting to break down that archetype and see more females behind the bar. That real grenadine really makes the difference. It just pops the color of the drink. And the last fun thing, this isn't totally necessary, but it helps add a little flair to the presentation. We're gonna garnish with an orange twist, but if you wanna flame the orange twist, that helps to draw out a little bit more of the orange flavor. You just apply the heat of a flame to the twist of an orange, draws the oils to the surface, and then you express that citrus peel into the flame.
Wow.
Maybe rub around the bottom of the glass for aroma.
Love the pyrotechnics.
Right?
Oh man.
And the Scofflaw. Cheers.
Cheers, thank you. That is so good. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
I want to thank our Indiegogo sponsors for getting us to this point. I also want to thank our sponsor, Knob Creek, for helping us with this episode. And remember to think and drink responsibly.
How is this 1941 cocktail, created in America with an American-made vodka and ginger beer, connected to an epic World War II battle between these two dictators that would ultimately determine the outcome of World War II? Find out more on the next episode of Happy Hour History.
What ails you, brown man? What makes you frown, man? Said a gal to her man, so miserable. You look so winning when you is grinning, with all your gold teeth visible. But lately you've been threatening to bust right out and cry. Does your dog fret you? What has upset you? Then he made this reply. I've had news, that's bad news about my